This month, it's all about Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Therefore, the books revolving around this video is going to be dedicated to reading more diversely of Asian authors and as well as characters that are featured of Asian descent. Basically, Cindy from the channel with Cindy has kind of co-hosted this whole reading challenge centered on AAPI month, and she has created a set of prompts to follow in your reading for this month. So let's just read the prompts and then I'll get into, some of the books I'm planning to read this month and some recommendations I would give to you that I've already read that I think would be also really good options to read. So the first prompt is, before I get into that, I forgot I made a little poster board of my book choices that I want to read, as well as the prompts kind of envisioned on here, if that makes sense. So number 1 prompt is a book written by an Asian author. Number 2, a book featuring a friendship. I'm going to do / relationship between at least 2 Asian characters. Prompt 3, a book written by an Asian author and or featuring an Asian character that shows them going on an adventure. Prompt number 4, a book written by an Asian author and or Asian character that is focused on identity / self-discovery. And then finally, number 5, a book with an Asian character who is a hot mess / famous / egocentric. So some of my books that I definitely want to use to fill up these prompts would be, in no particular order, are these 5 books in particular. These are my general options. So first what I'm looking at is The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. I've read Poppy War back last year, didn't finish it, so this would be a good opportunity to actually finish the series. Next will be my more recent buy, and that is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. And then my most recent pickup is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And then the one I literally just finished, which is Little Fires Everywhere, I'm including in this video though, by Celeste Ng. And then finally, yet another R.F. Kuang book, and it is Babel, because everyone raves about this book and I want to know why. So that's kind of like my bookish TBR for this whole month. But in case you wanted some more recommendations, I will give them to you. So one would be Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. Number 2 would be Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. Number 3 would be An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. Number 4 would be The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chokshi. And then finally, just for kicks, let's throw in a manga. It would be Jujutsu Kaisen. So that's kind of the setup for this video. Let's get started into the stuff.
I didn't want it again.
I am in New Jersey. I have some books that I brought with me on sort of vacation, which I will share with you from my lovely abode back in Canada. So I got 2 books because, I'm here for like a week. And if I don't finish one, if I do finish one, then I'll finish the other. I didn't realize. So the first one was this one, Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I've been wanting to read her books for a long time now, and I finally bought one at Indigo when they had this huge sale going on. So this is what I'm at. And this one's pretty critically acclaimed. I think it's her best rated book on Goodreads. That's why I bought this one in particular. It is skinny. It's not super long, about 330 pages, so I could finish it in a day if I was really committed to it, but it'll likely take me 2. The second book I brought is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee, right here. And this one is really special because a lot of people have talked about it. They love this book. And from what I gathered is that this is a historical fiction novel, and I think it's a kind of coming of age story. I know this is more of a profound read than probably Little Fires Everywhere. And I know it's been turned into a TV show. My sister talked about it. She doesn't read, but she's told me about it. And I'm interested to see how it will go. I'll start with this one. I'm already like a chapter into it, which is not bad. But once I get a couple more in, then I think I'll start updating more often. update on Little Fires Everywhere. So I made it up to chapter 4, page 34 now. So it's interesting. I'm still quite unsure about what is going on exactly. The first chapter really gave an insight into, I think, the problems that are going to be faced revolving the central character Izzy, who's very much the troublemaker and the rebellious character in everyone's eyes. But I'm kind of confused because they went from describing that whole incident of the Richardsons' house burning down and then jumping into Moody's perspective and Pearl and her mother Mia, and then I'm kind of confused as to how this ties in. And then I got to the end of chapter 3 where they just said, from Moody's perspective, if I hadn't introduced Pearl to my family, then maybe none of these misfortunes would have happened to us involving the house burning down, or Pearl moving away and distancing herself from Moody. At least that's what I'm kind of getting at. So it kind of connects now, which I'm much happier with. I understand it better, and I'm excited to see how it's going to progress better. If I'm right, I think this one was adapted into a movie. I might be confusing it with another book, but I feel like it was, so maybe I'll watch it and just see how it compares. But I'm just interested to see how it comes across. The one thing I don't like what authors do sometimes, especially in literary fiction, is not mention the character who the perspective is from at the beginning of each chapter, because sometimes they just say the chapter number and just start the chapter, which is, you know, fine, but like I want to know whose perspective I'm reading from, because I get confused so easily, especially when the author tends to switch perspectives within the same chapter. That gets so annoying and so difficult to read. But overall, I think it's quite easy to understand just because she starts it off just in a way where you can tell who's you're reading from, although we haven't been really introduced deeply into the other characters aside from Moody and I guess Pearl and Mia. But like the other characters are just like meh. I also like that there's not too many characters kind of involved in this. It's interesting because I find that with a lot of these bigger books that are like pretty profound, they usually have a lot of characters that are kind of info dumped at the beginning, but this one's really gradual. It's nice. I feel like I can remember a lot of them, which is a good sign. I think this book is going to be a memorable one considering I do remember some of these main points. I'm just excited to see what's to come. Let's continue. Final update for this book. I have finished it. Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Overall rating, I think I'm going to give it about 4.25 stars. Breath of fresh air. First things first about this book. It is such an interesting read because the entire time I was fairly hooked onto this book. It does take me a bit of time to actually read it, but once I was just like sat down on the couch, nothing else to do, no distractions. I finished like the last 100 pages in literally, I think, an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I really did enjoy all the characters. I don't know if I have a particular favorite. Mia is an interesting character. What's her name? Miss Richardson, also an interesting character. Here's the thing, is that this book, it's like all revolving around these very controversial subjects and topics. Things like abortion, pro-life, pro-choice is even mixed into this. Like family court matters, like divorce, like all these things. It's just surrogacy. Very intense at times. But what's so interesting is that you can't pick a side because no one, I think, is inherently right or wrong in some of these scenarios. They're just flawed characters with good intentions. That's the thing that makes it so difficult about this book. Because at one point, you're like reading about their stories and their history and then their current circumstances. And it's like you want to choose a certain side. But then on the other hand, they do something a little bit later that just completely flips on you. And then it's like, I don't even want to root for this person anymore. Honestly, she did such an amazing job writing such complex characters that are both in some ways relatable, but captivating at the same time. And the ending, I was like, I mean, to be honest, I thought it would have gone a bit differently, but I didn't expect her to kind of leave us on a cliffhanger like that. And it's a standalone book, so there's like nothing else to this. This is it. And to be honest, I was expecting maybe just a tiny bit more, because I'm usually a person who loves books that are like just wrapped up completely, no major loose ends left, but this one kind of left quite a bit of them. Maybe that was an intentional purpose, so she could maybe write another book in the future, or I don't know, put it towards another format. I don't know. I read Little Fires Everywhere in a single breathless sitting. Well, I read it in multiple sittings while breathing continuously and profusely. So my take on this is that I, for one, very much liked it. I think she will be an author I will look into more. Definitely her other books. Definitely the one that's always featured on the back, Everything I Never Told You. I don't know what it's about, but it sounds interesting. There's some things in this book I don't agree on at all, but at the same time, she wrote it as part of the character's story, and I guess their persona. And I mean, I can understand why she does certain things, but I don't agree with them. For instance, the thing with BB at the very end of the book, what she does, I don't agree with it at all. The whole court settlement thing was a big issue, but it was resolved at one point. There was a side they chose. Some people were upset. Some people were happy. That's natural. But what came after that, as a result of the consequences, just like, I feel bad, but it's like, it's intense. I think that book, she just does it so well of just almost making your heart drop, but also questioning your own motives at the same time. Like, it's just so interesting that way. Anyway, if you are looking for a literary fiction type of novel that really questions your beliefs and your morals and your values while also keeping you on your toes and questioning every character you thought you loved, maybe check this out, because this honestly is worth quite a bit. Like, it's definitely one of the top few reads I read this year, and it made me feel something. I think that's one of the things I look for the most when I'm reading, is when I feel happy, when I feel like I'm almost challenged on something. It just feels good, and this one felt very good. So that's that. The next book I'm reading is going to be Pachinko. Let's get into it. Okay, I'm reading outside now, so I want to provide a little update on Pachinko. I am 10 pages in now. Just started chapter 2. Okay, we're back. I'm actually really enjoying it. From what I know, based on reading the back, is that it's really focused on generational family values, I guess. I know it's generational family, but I don't know if it's related to trauma, if it's related to certain genetic disorders that are passed down, if it's related to identity, self-discovery. We're going to discover that ourselves. No pun intended. I found a really fun quote. Really gives the whole insight into how good the author's writing is. Like, let me just show you. It was just something so cozy that really gave me the insight to say, you know, this author is a really good writer, and their quotes just sound like so delicious because they're talking about food in the first thing. So this quote basically says, "In the kitchen, stacks of rice and soup bowls rested on well-built shelves, and braids of white garlic and red chilies hung from the low kitchen rafters. In the corner near the wash basin, there was an enormous woven basket heaped with freshly dug potatoes. The comforting aroma of barley and millet steaming in the black rice pot wafted throughout the small house." Like, that just sounds so delicious. I love it when it's so descriptive in their writing and that you can just feel the comfort and just the coziness and just the amazing aroma and smells that you can just understand just by reading it. And I feel like that is a good indication of how good the story is going to be. Even though it's something like so simple, just describing the food. As a foodie herself, I very much appreciated that, but still, it's just so wholesome. In this chapter, basically, we got introduced to these two parents who had 3 children. 2 of them died in their young age, one due to a reckless accident, second one due to a disease, and the third one who actually has a cleft palate and a rotated foot. His name is Huni. He survived, but I think because of his conditions, not many people were expecting him to get married or find someone, so the parents found a matchmaker for him to set him up, and eventually he did find someone to marry, and they tried numerous attempts to get pregnant and have a child. Unfortunately, the first few attempts didn't work out. I think they had a miscarriage, or they just weren't able to get pregnant, and so I think by the 4th, 5th time they were able to conceive a child at that point, and it was good. They were really happy together, and I think they said a few years later, if not many years down the road, then Huni died, the father with the cleft palate, leaving his wife a widow with their daughter Sunja. So I think Sunja here is actually the main female character in the story, and it's supposed to be focusing on her and maybe her mom as well. So we'll see how this goes. I'm actually really excited. The goal is here to at least get to page 100, and I feel like I will, just because it's so easy to read, and I love it when books do not make chapters enormously long. Whenever they do that, it just makes it so much more painful to read, because I have a short attention span sometimes, and I enjoy faster paced books. So when it's shorter chapters, I feel like it goes by faster just because I feel like I'm paced more, if that makes sense. So that's my update on Pachinko. Let us continue. I'm very excited, and we'll see what happens. Updates. Actually, this is not really an update. It's just me wanting to talk about something. So, like you probably have seen before, I did start to do more reading journaling. I think I was slacking a bit in the early parts of this year, but I've started to like add more entries into the journal and new pages. So, if you didn't see my last main vlog, I did this page right here that's basically dedicated to the book that I have yet to make a lot of progress in, or I kind of DNF'd or just put down and I still need to finish it. So it's kind of like books I need to continue reading basically on this page. And so I started this and I really love the look of it because I just thought it was so pretty. I got the idea from Katie. Katie is reading, and I thought it was so cool just because, you know, it's a really good, unique way to kind of fill up a page and just show what books you were reading and which ones you're in the middle of and which ones you're kind of reading at the same time. So I thought that was a fun thing to do. So obviously here's my version of it. And so I have an empty page beside it. So I was thinking I'll do another page, the exact same thing, and just leave it for any other books I add into that entry, so there's more space for it. Another thing I want to add is that I actually did this Jujutsu Kaisen spread before. I think I showed it in the other vlog, where I just showcase like all my favorite manga panels that I've read so far or have witnessed in the show. And so I'm obsessed with Gojo and Sukuna, so they're pretty much the main characters of this page, not surprising. And I was thinking, because I just recently read the first 3 volumes of Naruto because I had the set with me, I was like, okay, for the next page, how about I do something for Naruto similar like I did for Jujutsu Kaisen, just to fill up the page. So that was a good idea. I left a blank for that reason. And then the next page, once again inspired by Katie is Reading, I decided to make that typical kind of bookshelf spread where you just have a bunch of like small books drawn on the page, and you just kind of color in and write in the names of the books that you've completed during the year. And so that's kind of the aesthetic for this page. Just a little reading tracker. Speaking of reading trackers, I am so behind on my actual reading tracker. If you want to see, like, I basically made almost like a mini Excel spread of just panels and like a little way to mark and track my reading throughout the year. You can clearly see in the month of February and March, non-existent reading at all, didn't do anything. But that's because of my own choice. I just couldn't pick up books because school was nuts. But I am back reading now. I need to fill out more pages or more sections because I am behind in that. Also, the amount of mistakes I made on this page alone too, on my Goodreads tracker, like, just look at all, like, it's embarrassing. But you know what? It's fine. I think it just adds to the whole natural vintage aesthetic. No, it doesn't. It's just me making stupid mistakes. Yeah, I didn't read anything from Pachinko last time I updated, which is kind of bad. It's Thursday right now. But I'm going to read more today. Let's continue. Okay, so I'm giving an update on Pachinko now. So I'm like, I think about a quarter of the way into the book. So I'm on chapter 13. I'm actually really liking it so far. What I like is that there's so many really good quotes happening. And I love the way Sunja is kind of like integrating herself into the family. And it's just like really nice to see that happening. What I like is that just like the bittersweet moments you see between her and her mom when she had to leave, and then with the people she kind of grew up with, the other housemaids, and the resident, like, local fishermen who would stay in the boarding house with her and her mom. That was really sad too, because they also gave her like 2 yen, which was like most of their wage for 2 of the days that they worked. And her mother was like trying to tell her some advice about being a wife, and that how she could probably never really see her daughter again on her own. And it was sad. Like, it was showing moments where she was choking up just trying to talk to her about advice that she could give, and I thought it was a really special moment. And I think what I also like is just meeting her new sister-in-law and just seeing the potential that her relationship could be with her, and it's just so special and so sweet. So anyway, I'm going to continue this book. I'm having a great time right now, and we'll see how much better it gets. Honestly, I feel it's possible for a 5-star. I have no reasons as to why it wouldn't be. It just feels like it. So we'll see you on the flip side. Okay, so it has officially been now a long time since I've last updated, but I have officially finished Pachinko. Really hard book to read, I have to be honest. But overall rating for this one, we'll just start this off, is going to be 5 out of 5 stars. This one was really hard to put down and yet so hard to read at the same time. It is so emotionally impactful. It's one of those really profound novels. Like, I'd say The Kite Runner or even A Man Called Ove, like, they're like lighthearted stories usually, but they have some like more profound undertone or theme to it. That's what this one really highlights. Really strong emphasis on hope, survival, family, and generational and cultural impacts of colonization, as well as racism, abuse, so on and so forth. There's a lot of trigger warnings for this, so if you do want to check it out, I do highly recommend it, but very much check the trigger warnings because it can be pretty much to deal with at times, but it's so worth it. My favorite aspect of this book would have to be just the ability to connect with the characters so well. It's so weird because the author writes so fast-paced, because it's so interesting how there's only like 470 pages in this book, and there's so much that happens, and yet it feels like it was given the right amount of time and energy to really allow yourself to connect with the characters and the story. So even if I don't remember like every minute aspect, I feel like I can understand the broad aspect of the story because everything was just so elaborated so well on. And it's just like I get the feeling like it reminds me of Daughter of the Moon Goddess, because I remember my main issue with that book was that it was too fast-paced and too much was going on, and there wasn't much detail to really support that. It was kind of just skimmed over a lot of the time. This one basically fixed all those problems I had in that book and did it better in this one. Although it's two completely different authors, separate books, not related to each other at all, I feel like this one just does a better job of that. It outclasses it in every way. The one thing I'm like a little puzzled by is just the ending of this book. I'm like, should it really have ended that way? I feel like it should have left a bit more of an impact on me. Maybe because I didn't understand it as much, but still I'm gonna give it 5 stars. You know, the emotional journey was a lot, but it was really, really well worth it. And so that's Pachinko. Also, while we're on the aspect of concluding this, let's talk about the whole AAPI month reading challenge thing. So like I said, it was hosted by Cindy, or co-hosted by her. And so there was 5 prompts. I think in overall this month, I did manage to complete maybe 3 or 4 of them, not all of them. And it's funny because I didn't really stick to my TBR that much. I kind of just pulled out books that I did read this month written by Asian authors and just assessed it based on that. So these are the 4 books. I read some in this vlog, some in previous ones. So let's just start off with, obviously you saw me read Pachinko. So that's done, 5 out of 5. And then I read, before this, you saw me read Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I think it was 4.5 stars for that. And then more recently, in the last vlog, I read Naruto, the first 3 volumes by Masashi Kishimoto. And then we have Jujutsu Kaisen by Gege Akutami, the first volume. Both of these, I think Naruto I gave a full 5. Jujutsu Kaisen I think was like 4.5 or something like that. Either way, really good. So that's basically the conclusion to this readathon. It was actually really fun for me. I wish I did complete it, but you know what? I made really good progress. And some things I really did learn about myself is that I found a new annotating system for me. I thought it was really great that I could actually figure out something that works for me and something that I like to do. Because I remember when I previously tried to annotate, it didn't work out that well. I found that it was very messy and I didn't like the way I coordinated it. And so I just kind of was like really bummed about it the entire time. But when I actually picked up the new tabs and was able to like highlight properly and tab it and make notes that I felt like I was confident and enjoyed in, I was much more satisfied with how it turned out. So that's that. And so thank you so much for watching this video and stay tuned for my next vlog.